Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here in the new year for once again one of our farm talks. Uh, so, as we do every year, or as we do every episode, sorry, we're going to have Rodney, Ray, and Rob give their best advice and guidance on farm production here in Nevada. And so, since we are in the cold months, was going to suggest that we could start off by talking about how we look back in winter at what happened in the last season to make those decisions for planning for the upcoming year. So, anyone have any thoughts on that to begin with?
Um, I am always planning at least 6 months in advance. So when I'm already thinking about what I'm going to plant for the summer. In a few months I'll be thinking about what I'm going to plant in the fall and how I'm going to organize it. You have to, in my opinion, you have to be that far ahead, otherwise you're behind.
And any specific, do you go back and look at your sales receipts to make decisions on that?
Sure. It's like this year, we got that notice from the Home Feed Nevada program that they're out of funding. Um, I'm cutting out two greenhouses I'm not going to grow in, at least tomatoes. This means I'm going to start doing farmers markets again and direct sales. So I'm downsizing quite a bit. But the funding may come later in the year, and so I also have to think about, well, how can I increase production when that time comes as well? So um, yeah, the whole sell before you sow or idea is important. So you got to line out your markets. If you're going to do farmers markets, you grow differently for that than you might grow for, Home Feed Nevada or a grocery store. You might grow more specific products when you're doing farmers markets. The more variety you have on the table, the better. The more you draw customers to your table.
Ray or Rob, you want to throw in on that?
Sure, I'll jump in there. About the first part of December, I met with two of my volunteers, and we kind of got jazzed up about 2025. And it's strange sometimes how that comes about. But there's an old saying, when one door closes, another one opens. And I think we have a outlet for our products this year in Reno. Even though Home Feeds Nevada is running out of, has run out of money, I think we have a new game in town, and she was on the show last time. It was kind of interesting and jazzed us up, and so we're talking about going full bore this next year, and whether I make it through the year or not, who knows? But the plan is to go, and I'm looking forward to it. We're going to get together, these two volunteers and I, this Saturday, and start going over transplants and things of that nature to get started. I'm really kind of jazzed up about 2025.
It's funny. Farmers are the most eternal optimists. But my mental state goes with the daylight length. And so I'm usually down the furthest around December 21st, but as soon as that switches and the days start getting longer and I start thinking about growing, I get excited and all worked up for the coming growing season. Um, I don't know. Do you guys have the same experience or? uh,
Oh, most definitely. Particularly my wife Lonnie and her sister, my sister, they're like solar powered. I look forward to shorter days and actually not working until 9 or 10 at night. So the winters provide a highly anticipated season of a little more rest. But nonetheless, once the days start getting longer, we all get excited too. It's just, it's really a bummer. Like on the days that I drive to work in Reno, to leave in the dark and get home in the dark, it just feels unnatural. And so we like the longer days and we get a lot more done. So we're excited. And we're likewise excited about this year. Last year toward the second week of September, we lost our well pump, which is a really big deal. It was still hot. We barely kept stuff living. And then we realized how little our pump had been putting out for a long time. So we're really excited not only about our specialty crop growing potential, but getting some of the pastures and fields around here for our sheep and some cows when they're at home to be able to have a place to be. We're excited. We're excited for sure. Yeah, the longer days are a great thing. There's a minute and 40 seconds more daylight right now, like in Belgrade, where my sister-in-law is from. She keeps us posted.
Oh, perfect. That point about the well, I think also fits in kind of this notion of using the winter months to work on some of the infrastructure or, improvements that might not be able to be prioritized during the growing season. Is there anything, you have advice in terms of keeping track of what improvements need to be done or prioritizing that so that, what needs to be done first gets done first?
For me, hoop house repair, plastic that's torn from the wind. I start getting the repairs and getting the houses ready for the season. This year, I think we're going to have to put down some barriers to keep rabbits out. We've been I've never had troubles with rabbits, but this year there's really, I think it has to do with the drought. So we're going to have to do some exclusion work around the hoop houses. Um, um, Start looking at seeds and got to buy seeds soon because they become out of stock quite quickly, the more popular seeds. Um, um, Cleaning up, we got to pull the old crops, like our tomatoes in our greenhouses. We got to pull the old crops out, get the houses cleaned up and reset, make sure everything's working and functioning. And I mean, there's a lot of work to do, but I also enjoy the time off in the wintertime. So I kind of try to set a date of 1st of February to really start getting and working on stuff.
That's largely what we do. And that process for us starts even in the fall, making sure that when a particular crop or one of our high tunnels that were done in it, that that the water's shut off, that any manifolds, particularly if something's made out of PVC, that it's actually drained. And so that process starts then. It really reduces the amount of repairs that we have to make in the spring when we turn the water back on and are reminded of what we forgot about. Um, and that's really it happens every year to some degree, but we try and mitigate that by putting things away with good soil moisture, no water in the pipes, no loose flapping plastic. Last week, and anybody in this area knows how windy it was whatever day that was, Saturday, Friday, somewhere. Um, just kind of keeping an eye on things. We're putting in another high tunnel. I don't know. Daniel's our oldest son. I don't know if he'll where else he could put one, but he seems to always be finding a spot. So we've got some bows marking that footprint out right now. And that's kind of what we do now that the days are getting longer and our company's gone. We look forward to December not doing a whole lot between Thanksgiving, Christmas. So we're starting to get outside and make use of these longer days. Um, Tumbleweeds, we any place in the desert, depending on how your neighbors manage their land, you get a lot of tumbleweeds, and so we're trying to mitigate that now, so we're not fighting them in the spring. Thinking about irrigation and how we can make improvements. Not sure if we will. Daniel has some ideas on the how-tos, but we're just not sure if we'll do it this year or not. But a lot the same as what Rodney's talking about.
Do you guys have like a to-do list? Is there something each year? How do you organize it in terms of?
We do actually. We have I don't know, it's about this wide. So probably a 3x4, 2.5x4, a couple whiteboards. And last night after dinner, we had a little planning session. And we try not to get too far out. Back when I worked for the state, we used to come up with 5 and 10-year plans. Like a 5 or 10-year goal is one thing, but a 5 or 10-year plan usually doesn't much happen after like 12 or 18 months. It's all different. And on a daily basis on the farm, things change so much with weather, with market changes, crop failures, pests, that we kind of go 2 weeks or a month at a time and have our whiteboard, and it's propped up between our living room and dining room. So no matter where we're at, we see it, and it keeps us reminded.
Jordan?
Yeah, right.
I think one of the things that I do here is kind of what Rob's talking about. Planning for the next year, type thing.
Yeah.
Everything kind of goes with it, and prioritizing, of course. But there's a little problem of motivation. When you get into the time of year where you have very little daylight, very little warmth, you just kind of hang back and figure, well, maybe next week we can get to that. And so that's going to probably catch up to me here in about a month. And I'll be moaning and groaning that I didn't get things done. And I think other people probably have the same problem out there, getting the motivation to get going. We've got the concept and and everything, and I'm lucky enough that I have a 21-year-old UNR graduate, just graduating in December, and then a 13-year veteran here working at the farm. And between the two of them, they give you inspiration. Now the personal motivation, kind of gets left by the wayside, and they come in and start talking about all the things they want to do. And of course, we're talking 21st century now instead of 20th century where I've been. And so I think my motivation will improve. I hope so. But I think everybody out there has the same problem with these very short daylight days and all.
Certainly am glad to be seeing the longer days day by day. Do we have any questions from the group? And while waiting to see if there's anyone who has a question, especially around this notion of kind of organizing and planning over the winter, if anyone else wants to share their best tip for overcoming those short days and motivations. So, Jolene, yeah.
I'd like to offer the perspective of doing what nature does and hibernating in the winter. I think our American culture, I've lived in other places and I've done a little bit of information with like food equity and understanding patriarchal conditioning and white supremacy and things. And I think we live in a very productive culture where that's the gold star and you get a little gold star by your name if you overwork every week, etc. So my offering is that I think it's actually really great to just sleep and to nourish ourselves and to rest. And I think that we get a lot of wisdom from our intuition and from our restorative selves. And I had a really good idea in the middle of the night about Nevada Farm Network, and I was sleeping. And I dreamt about Nevada Farm Network a lot last night. And it was a really great dream. And I remember saying, I love working. And that came to me in my dreams. So yeah, just kind of the notion that we don't always have to be productive. And like if we're farmers and if we're in alignment with nature, nature rests, you know, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
It
you get
reminds
motivated after you rest, so.
there's a famous study about like solving crosswords. When you're not paying attention, that's when the answer comes to you. And so we do definitely need that time to not focus on something so that, the background processing can happen. That's a really great point. Anyone, questions, suggestions, or additional thoughts on how to organize and make the use of this slower time?
Can I add one more thing?
Of course,
George?
always.
Okay. Starting in December, I was getting catalogs. The catalogs for 2025. And so I did spend quite a few days with my nose in the catalog, looking at all the goodies that I wish and want for. And then, of course, with the help that I have here and all, we went ahead and ordered a majority of our seed for 2025. So, the balance sheet this year on the farm is going to show a lot more expense simply because we purchased seed for 2025 in 2024. And it was kind of neat. All the days of December, I was getting packages of seed from the different companies. And
Like an advent of it. So when do you aim to finish, Ray? To have everything purchased?
Well, it's kind of up in the air right now because we will be doing a presentation at the small farm conference, and I'll be using some of my seed and products at that presentation, and co-op is going to reimburse me, and their process is to for me to give them a list of everything, and then UNR purchases it and gets it back to me. So we'll see how much we use. It's kind of one of those things that we've done this program on at Duck Valley Indian Reservation and South Fork Reservation back in 2020, and but this time we're going to do this program in a little bit different way, and I think we'll have a lot more people involved. And
For those that are not aware, this is the Nevada Small Farms Conference. I just dropped that in the chat. That is February 20th through the 22nd at the Nugget in Sparks. And that is part of the Risk Management Agency's conference series. So there are going to be presentations on everything from, the propagation, horticultural aspects, to the business aspects, to policy aspects, and networking and socialization. So for those of you in the Northern Nevada area, a really good opportunity. And again, that information is in the chat for registration.
Something else that I start to do here soon is I use a web-based farm plan program. It's I think it's seedtime.us, and you can sign up for a free trial, or in order to get the more advanced stuff, you pay for a. But the basic one is really all that I need. But you can plan out your whole farm, individual hoop houses, row crops, and it'll, graphically, as well as on lists, show you the plants that you're planning to grow. I don't know if anybody else uses that, but I find it useful to kind of map out what I'm going to do for the year or the season.
Anyone else use a seed planning or crop planning digital tool like that? Todd's Farm Tools. We've got a mentioned.
It's just a Google web app. So it's all free. He's got everything from the Farmer's Almanac uploaded into that, and it has worked wonders for my farm, my home, all my producer certificate people that I help out. And I do it for all the schools in Lyon County too.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Terrific.
the one that I use, one of the features that I like is that you list the plants and the varieties that you're going to grow, and then it gives you a planting schedule of, hey, this should be planted on this date based on your frost dates. So it keeps me keeps me on schedule.
We have tried some different programs. I'm not sure which one we use right now for our livestock, but it works pretty well. And one of the things we've had as a real challenge in past years, I forget the name of the programs, but we had tried a couple of different apps and software that really were handy, and we enjoyed using them, and then suddenly they were no longer supported. And so we just like paper records for that reason. It's just such a challenge, unless you're using Excel, which really doesn't change, to use something that our experience, and granted, this is some years ago, our experience was that some of these companies didn't continue. And that's not reflecting on any of the ones that have been mentioned, but that's why we quit 4 or 5 years ago, is because 2 different companies that we used went out of business, and it just stunk. So, and one of the, I guess there's that old saying, and it's an old world saying, make hay while the sun shines. And that can be interpreted in a lot of ways, and I use it a lot. You use it in the summer when you're making hay and it's not raining, and you go out and you make hay. You cut and you rake and you bale and you get it out of the field before it gets cloudy and rains again. But it really, I think, has a broader perspective that ties in with what Jolene was saying, is that there are, for everything there is a season. There's, like the same fellow King Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. And the winter's days have always been short. The summer days are always long, in order to make up for the rest and the sleep and the eating and the thinking that happens in the winter. we've got here, particularly at our latitude, we've got much longer summers than we do winter days. And so you have to translate those times in the summer into product. And there are some people on their farms that are pretty disciplined about farming for 8, 9, 10 hours and calling it done. But between our cattle and our sheep and our hay and our vegetable garden, it's those long days that allow us to do all that. And thankfully, they're all resting now too, so we don't have to work so hard. But that make hay while the sun shines. It's just you got to take advantage of those opportunities, but recognize those opportunities to rest when it's not that time, and take advantage of that in a different way.
Jordan,
Yes.
let's go back a minute to books to read this time of year. There are a lot of books out there that go into the germination time for different plants, companion plants, all of these things that can help you chart out what you want to plant, how long it takes to harvest. All of that can be done at this particular point in time through reading. And I've used these charts for years, and I run them off. And anytime I have any kind of a PowerPoint or something of this nature, I always give out these sheets, and people kind of appreciate seeing, how long it takes to grow a cabbage, how long it takes to grow some of these things. It's kind of surprising in a lot of ways, and probably the only one that I found that holds true is probably the melons. Now, you get a number of days to harvest on a melon from the package. It will tell you. And they're usually within about 5 days, I've found, of being true. That's exactly where it ends up. And that's always helps me plan just what I'm going to put in, how I'm going to run water to it, what's at the end of the line, what's in the middle, all of these things. So, Jolene, you got some books there that go into the charts, I hope.
Yeah, and Lindsay does a lot of the stuff. And we've hired 2 full-time people this year for the first time ever. So I told them about this Farm Talk, and I know Peter, one of the employees, is really excited. One of them's going off to Japan, so he's going to get his restoration and some. But I'm thankful for all these, like the seed time, and even I just did what Justin said and got the open source Excel spreadsheets, and I was looking at those. So I'm going to send that to the crew.
Good.
I'm just interested in things that we do once and then we don't have to do it again, like create the structure. So I quite like an Excel spreadsheet. When we're doing some community gardens that I'm helping manage. So that's kind of where I'm interested in, like creating that structure for folks in the slow time while I'm getting paid and I have more time, and then having that be a tool that they use next year.
Another thing that we do here, it's anybody who knows me well, I chatter a lot. So if I'm out in the garden by myself, I'll see something that warrants conversation, and there's no one to talk to. So I think it drives Lonnie and Dan a little crazy, but I'll shoot them a text or I'll call and say, hey, we need to think about this. And that ingrains it a little further into my brain. And but really, I try not to do that, because some days I'm like, I've called way too many times, and I need to not do that. So I use the Note app in my phone, and I'll purge it every now and then, because then I realize how I'm also a prolific note taker, and I get lost in there. But if there's something that I notice that's like, this is important, we need to do this, I'll take a picture of it, or I'll put it in my Note app so that I can text it to them or talk about it at a more opportune time. But really, the using a cell phone, the technology, it's more than a phone with a flashlight. I still don't remember the flashlight, just hardwired to look for a flashlight. But but using that note-taking app is it's a great thing to make notes of, and things that otherwise you'll forget, and you may not have a pad and some place to write it. And texting them to yourself, then they get lost in your text thing, and that doesn't work for me. But using that note-taking app is fantastic. And you can attach
Yeah,
pictures to those as well.
I really like the idea of being able to use the photos too, because then you have timestamps of when that picture was taken, so you can know, when that started germinating or when you needed to do some kind of work effort. Something I think that is really important to emphasize is that the thing that is going to work for people is what works for them, and that's going to be based on who they are, what you have experience of, and what you feel comfortable with. And something I always see discussed is how the most important thing is to make sure that it works for you, and not to try to force yourself to use some sort of system that is not actually going to be appropriate. But I personally love the Note app too, so that's a great one. Any other thoughts on this? Post-its. Yeah, I'm a big post-its person as well. Or any other questions from our group? I know Garrett has brought up a number of times the value of having a farm journal, so that you can have a documentation of what you had known and had seen before. I think that likewise is one of a suite of options to um, keep that information.
The camera, because it's date stamped, is also how we'll go back, instead of having to, I don't remember tomorrow what I did today. But if I have a picture of it, I can go back and say, oh, okay, I planted so and so in this row of that high tunnel, fertilized with this, whatever the case is, sprayed BT on this date, because it's date stamped. And I've always liked snapping pictures, and I'm super visual. So having those pictures in a camera in my pocket has just really helped with those record keeping. And then we can sit down periodically, and I can go through those pictures and enter that onto our actual calendar for our organic certification. And it's really made that process a lot easier, and not having to write things down multiple times, but to have that picture that I can refer to. And then it takes it from my phone and it stores it in my Google files, so it really never goes away. And you can organize them. It's fantastic for organic record keeping also.
So are you saying you take photos, of every seed packet, the lot, so the lot number, or every amendment?
I do. I'll when I go out to sow green frilly lettuce, I forget what variety it is, but just a green frilly lettuce, and I'll take a picture of the bed, and I don't have to label it because I recognize where it's at. We only plant lettuce in a certain number of our high tunnels, and so I know what bed it is. I have the date, the time. I have a picture of the packet of seed, and that has the lot number and the variety and the date, or the germination date, the test date is usually on there. And it has the company that we order it from, Johnny's or High Mowing, or where we get a lot of our certified organic seeds. And so, yeah, all that information is right there on that picture with the date stamp filed. And it really has helped us a lot with our record keeping. because I can go through at any time. And that's one of the things we do when the days are short and we're not out working in the garden is we'll pull all those, well, we'll pull them, just scroll through that file and write those things down on the days. And then it's all in the calendar where our inspector can see it. So yes, to answer your question, yes.
Very cool. Did anyone else have any other good suggestions on books, things that you've read recently that you've enjoyed or would recommend?
Not be for our bigger people, but this book just came out, The Celestial Garden. If people are wanting to do their gardens by the moon phases and stuff. And then she also goes into like where the planets are within the astrological signs and how that can increase your productivity of your gardens and stuff. So maybe not great for large production, but some of the smaller farmers that are interested in gardening by the moon phases.
Very cool. Very cool. I saw someone had mentioned the medicinal herbal garden. I've been trying to figure that one, find that one. My goal this year is to get an herb garden established. Nice. I've been, my wife has, I don't know if y'all have been dealing with this walking pneumonia that people seem to be having where, yeah. So we've been drinking a lot of thyme and eucalyptus and all of the herbs trying to help breathe. So I can start growing them too.
Jordan, my favorite book that I read was, can you hear me? Was The Food Fix by Dr. Mark Hyman. So good. It came out a few years ago now, but I listened to it on Audible, so I didn't actually read it, but I listen when I clean the house and I'm doing other stuff, I listen to the books. But it was so reaffirming about putting my energy and effort into food systems and understanding like the background of the industrial ag and how it's affecting people's health and stuff. So it was very motivating and reaffirming in terms of just understanding the larger context and really what could be the solutions for healthy food and stuff. So I'd highly recommend it. It will keep you wanting to farm and providing healthy food for people.
That's awesome. Is he involved in the regenerative ag?
He's more,
Yeah.
I'm kind of in like the wellness sphere. That was my previous work experience, was like working in wellness centers and things in London. And so I have a lot of like personal health. That's why I'm in this world, is because I was a sick kid and all that. So point being, he's a doctor and he's kind of a holistic doctor and he's more in that line. He has like a clinic in, I believe, Ohio, where he does a lot of like functional nutrition and things like that. So it's a little bit more from like a wellness perspective than it is about ag, but it very much talks about food systems and things.
You know, we see such a reduction of the nutrients of produce that's grown in organic or in conventional production, and those are the nutrients that the immune system relies on, that your body relies on to keep itself healthy. So I think it's no surprise that when we're eating food that is basically just water, you're not getting anything that you need. 1924 recipes we have from Justin. That those, I don't know, that fits my palate, but curious. There's some aspic marshmallows. Thanks, Jill.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the ingredients aren't around anymore. Like you can't just go source all natural flour somewhere now. It's a much more difficult process to find some of these things. But I've been having a lot of fun with it, and that's what I've been doing. So I think I'm going to do like 20 more of those.
Very cool. Yeah, it is. It's completely, I don't think maybe 10% of the products that you get in a store now are something that someone 100 years would be able to source. So,
and along those same lines about the historic truth of some of these things we're talking about, nutrition and soil and moon phases. Anna, we had she passed away 6 or 8 years ago. The last agrarian in Dayton Valley, Grace Ritchie was her name. She grew up on a farm in Fallon. She was widely known, and as was her father. He used to take pole crops and brassicas down and show them at California State Fair in San Francisco and win ribbons. And they were true old world agrarians. And so much of her knowledge sadly wasn't passed to her children. It was both their faults. They didn't want to know and she didn't teach them. So it just died when she died. And she used to talk to me about, well, when she'd plant her garlic or her potatoes, and they followed moon phases, but not always exactly. Sometimes it was a couple days one side or the other, but she knew all these things as part of her being. And she planted her potatoes she planted on Easter weekend. And I don't know, she just had all these old world perspectives, and nobody in this valley has ever grown a garden like hers, and not since either. So a lot of the nutrition, the soil practices, regenerative agriculture is nothing new either. Traditionally it's the way people farmed. Moon phases and that idea that there's a season for all things, and people are coming back to that now, but there were generations of people that always seemed to understand that. And so, yeah, so I have the celestial garden. Is that what it's called? I have that written down because that's one of the things that Grace incorporated into her beautiful, beautiful garden here. And they used to grow, this is where I was going with that. They used to grow commercially on that ranch, and then her husband later got into hay and cattle like all of our neighbors did, but they all used to grow row crops when the Virginia City Comstock was at its height. The animals came from Washoe Valley, Carson Valley, your grains from there, fruit from Reno, because it's a little more mild in the Truckee Meadows. But a lot of your root crops and other vegetable crops and potatoes came from Dayton Valley. And those principles that their ancestors used worked well to optimize their production and also take care of the soil. That was in the days before all of the chemical fertilizers from leftover nitrogenous waste from the war efforts. But that's a whole nother topic. But anyway, yeah, so it all works together, and the land is happy and the people are happy and their bodies are happy, and it all works.
I would just recommend anyone who is interested in the history and development of the chemical fertilizer industry to do some Googling about what Rob just mentioned about how it really came out of waste products from warfare, which I don't think very many people make that connection, which was startling when I read that the first time.
A little diesel and certain fertilizers makes a great, that explosive technology from wartime minus the diesel is where a lot of that early fertilizer came from, ammonium nitrate. And as far as synthetic fertilizers goes, it's great. You have short-term, long-term nitrogen because one breaks down at a different pace, and then the gradual increased reliance on that just like steamrolled into this giant industry. But and not that it was good, but it worked. But yeah, it's crazy how it all started.
I'm just going to go back again for any questions, anything people are struggling with themselves or, looking forward to and want to get some insight or advice on. While y'all are thinking about that, I don't know if anyone follows the vertical farming where they try to do it indoors. I thought it was an interesting point. There are all these people who think we can replace the phases of the moon and the sun and, do that all internally. And one of those companies just got a new investment round at like a 90% discount. So basically, people thought this company was going to be a huge success. And now it's trading for pennies on the dollar because turns out it's a lot harder to replace the sun and the soil and the water.
That goes back to you can't fool Mother Nature.
Exactly. Justin, you had a question? Or?
I do a lot of my seed starts. I'll be starting next week, but I'll grow hydroponic in my garage to get my seeds ready for the next season. I do all my tests now. So I've got seeds that I've carried over from last year, but all my new stuff I'll have in the hydroponic beds now, and I'll start getting them in my greenhouse around March. So I like mixing all the old with the new.
Do you move that into soil when you move them in March, or are you still putting them in like some
I
kind
will
of
move them into
substrate
soil in March.
in your
Yeah.
soil?
Yep. And then I try to pH balance with my hydroponic and my soil.
I've tried that once last year. Everything died when I moved into soil. So I don't know if you've got any
That's the
suggestions.
pH balance. You got to make sure that pH is right.
Interesting. I really was going just based on vibes and was not successful.
Yeah, the hydroponic doesn't care about vibes at all.
About 10 more minutes. If anyone has any additional questions, thoughts.
I've got a question to throw
Yeah,
out
right.
there. This is probably a good time of year to seek raw manure
Mm.
from different farms, and it would be nice to know who's got what type of manure and where it might be available. I've had to depend upon the compost for quite a few years, and before that, I was running strictly on manure from the farms around this area in Smith Valley, and
Yeah, I'd love if that was something that we could post about on the farm network and get a response. So maybe we can have something up there, and then if anyone knows anyone who we could reach out to here.
well, there's places out there that they have corrals with manure that needs to get cleaned out of the pens, and so hopefully I'm asking who's got what and where, and that type of thing, and it could be working out for both parties, the farmer and for the rancher that has the goat or sheep in pens and what have you. So this is where I used to get my manure from a organic farmer that raised organic sheep and goats, and I cleaned out their pens once a year. And oh boy, I really wish they were still here, but they moved to Texas. So my manure supply has dried up. I'm looking for a new one because I would love to go that route again. It just seems to be a better all round fertilization and reviving the nutrients in the soil. Full circle compost is great. No complaints there whatsoever. But the cost of that and the thickness that you need to put on the ground to really make a difference is something for small areas, not large areas, in my opinion. So the raw manure out there in the fields this time of year would be great to be able to talk about and be able to get done.
Would it need to be
I-
organic?
I would not take any manure that was not from organic animals, feed animals. Yeah. You know, what goes in comes out. So I want to keep it as pure as we can for organics.
And that's exactly right. What goes in goes out. And I know that we're spreading manure on our fields here at home right now and cleaning out our pins. And the parasites are a problem for all creatures, really. And but one of the things to really be careful of with, particularly with horse manure and cattle, if people use a lot of zymectrin, it carries through. It's passed in their waste. Horse manure, it's passed in their waste. And so if you use, and I knew this, and it's been confirmed by a lot of people. The Witts, Craig and Cody, are really careful where they get their manure from they use in their compost, because if it has residual wormers and parasiticides in it, it actually kills the roundworms and the segmented worms in the soil. And so, and the nematodes, that's the word I was looking for. But so you do have to be careful, as Ray was saying, where you get it. I have seen, I'm not on Facebook Marketplace, and Craigslist is kind of dying out, but I'm still a Craigslister, and middle-aged and older farm men like Craigslist, I'm afraid. And so I still find bargains there. But but you do see people on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, places that they need their corrals cleaned. They have a pile. The terms vary. Some people want a dump trailer and you have to shovel it. Other people have a loader and they'll scoop it for you. And so that's where I would look as a starting place. I know that that's one of the nice things about our situation, is that we're able to produce a lot of our own soil nutrients. We just move it from the pins to the fields or the pins to the garden at some point. And but that's where I would look. I would look on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, and even put a thing out there that this is what you're looking for. Because if people see an outlet for their manure from their pins, and someone says, "Hey, I'm looking for that," then you might get somewhere. So that's where I would look.
Something
I
for
would
that.
like to make a comment real quick. Uh, most of us probably know that the bird flu is spreading. I don't know if that carries through to the manure or not. And I know the dairies in California. I was just talking to a hay farmer before this meeting, and when they're delivering hay, they're required now to spray off their trucks when they're delivering to dairies as they're leaving. If they get out of the trucks and they walk around, they have to wash their shoes. So this is this bird flu is spreading to even small flocks and small herds. And so you just need to be mindful of that too for our health.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. If there are no other questions or topics of discussion, I think we'll leave it at that. We will be back January 21st. So thank you once again for a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate everyone from our farmers and our participants, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.